viewer contributions make local programming possible on WNIN. Become a member of WNIN with your contribution so we can continue to make this programming available. Visit WNIN.org and click on the donate button.
And we are back after a nice reprise.
How's your summer going, Your Honor?
Not too good.
Well, I hate to hear that.
I wrecked my vehicle.
Can we sue somebody?
No, my fault. Other than that, the summer's been going pretty well.
But you weren't hurt.
Was not hurt.
That's good. Well, there's not a whole lot to talk about nationally, unless you're a Marine and you just got called in on the streets of Los Angeles.
Or unless you're a member of the IU Board of Trustees, was elected by the alumni.
Both of which of us have served on that August
And the governor
board.
just said, you're fired. By the way, I saw a picture of the letter, nice letter he sent to an alumni member of the board informing that member they were fired. It was a very sweet letter.
Well, you know, they had 6 seats. They now have all 9, and perhaps the oasis of progressive thought in Bloomington will now be pushed into the fold.
Here's the thing. It should be a wake-up call for all the institutions of higher learning. They're all on the bullseye of the General Assembly. This General Assembly is not about education. It's about indoctrination.
Perfect segue for our guest today, ladies and gentlemen, who we will get to in a little while. We have a person who is part of statewide education. Sue Ellspermann will be joining us. But before we get there, let us talk about the national climate. We are taping this on a day in which the President of the United States, convicted felon that he is, has called in the National Guard, federalized the National Guard, and has now called in Marines into the streets of Los Angeles.
When you use the term federalized, he's called in out asking the governor of California's permission to do so.
I'm not sure he asked that permission, which is why the governor and the Attorney General of California have filed a lawsuit.
No, he did not ask them.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I misunderstood.
That's why I was using the term federalize them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what are your judicial thoughts about that move? I mean, Fort Sumter, Lincoln said, have them fire on us and then we'll remember. Then the Civil War began when this kind of crap happens, when we put troops in American cities?
Let's put it this way. There's not a federal judge that should get any sleep this summer. They're going to be on call 24 hours a day.
Well, it's your branch of government, it appears, that is the last referee that we have. I mean, I don't know where this goes. You and I worried that the constitutional crisis would be the executive branch not following a judicial order. I think we have a different constitutional crisis now.
They're reading words into the law that aren't there.
Well, I don't know. But we did just finish up a state legislative session in which it appears that the Republican Party, which is the only party we have in the state of Indiana anymore, my team doesn't even need to show up, and there's still a majority in both houses. But we have a budget that I think in 4 years might save us a couple $100 on our property taxes at the expense of education from K-12 all the way up.
And we're talking about money from the government. Let's keep in mind, it wasn't enough to cut the budget. They now want to claw back some of that money from the federal government for WNIN and other NPR and public broadcasting entities.
Any place where there has been progressive thought, or at least the appearance of the other side, seems to be under the microscope.
Let me say this. Clawback, if this legislation passes, will wipe out public television, NPR, because that's money you've already spent. You need to come up and give it back to the government.
Well, I want to thank our 5 million viewers who tune in religiously and regularly every month to hear the truth from the two of us, but they got to expect you to disagree with me about something.
Well, it's hard to disagree with stupidity. I mean, as that colonel, that general who was during the big hurricane several years ago during the Bush administration,
Yes.
You can't fix stupid.
Was that when he said, good job,
Brownie.
Brownie? Thank you. I've forgotten Brownie. Well, I want to think that maybe what's going on nationally, the troops in California, was simply to move the TV cameras off of Elon Musk, saying he's in the Epstein files and he should be impeached and all this. You know, his good bud. We were all the chainsaw and all that, and Elon's my buddy and all that, and Tesla's on the drive in front of the White House. And all of a sudden, they had a big breakup right there in front of all of us. But the way to change the conversation in the news is to put troops in California.
So you think it's what they're doing? It's a diversion.
I do. I think that's clearly what it is. Donald Trump, sinister, evil clown that he is, has great instincts and intuition about the use of the media. That's where he came from.
He came from real estate, didn't he?
He and Steve Bannon both have said, we're just going to keep throwing things at you and changing it, and they got to keep the camera on us. Meanwhile, people vote for him.
Well, I think the real test will be how the Republican Party does in the midterm elections.
Well, that's right. Well, we'll deal with this till 2026, and you 5 million will continue to watch us. Do you know that there are Harper kids out there, Janet out there in Seattle, and Carla up in Indianapolis? My 8th grade, you remember these people?
Yeah.
They tell me all the time you can watch WNIN if you dial it up on your computer and all of that. Thank you. Stay tuned. We've got a great guest. We're going to talk to Sue Ellspermann, a former lieutenant governor of this great state, about the fact that she's going to retire and she's younger than both of us. Ladies and gentlemen, Shively and Shoulders is honored to have a gal from Ferdinand, Indiana, younger than both of us, who found a way after serving her state in a variety of capacities we're going to talk about, a great career, former lieutenant governor, currently head of all of Ivy Tech. Welcome, Sue Ellspermann.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be back after a decade or so.
A decade. Time flies.
It does.
Now let's get to the first and most immediate question. You announced, I think, about a year ago, right? June of 2024, that you were going to hang it up. Why? You're only like 60 or something like that.
I am the official age of retirement. And it was time. 9 years, Ivy Tech was in a great spot. We had done the work that's needed, and it's grown. It's doing very well. My husband's retired twice, so I thought I should retire once. And we're expecting a 10th grandchild in August. Yes, right here in the great Evansville area. So it was just time. And we baby boomers, of which I think we all three are at the table.
You bet.
My belief is we've stayed around a little too long. It's time to let the next group lead.
Well, good answer.
I'm going to do one more term, though.
You are. Well, I get it. I'm still out there. So tell us, Sue, girl from Ferdinand, Indiana, you've had a great career. Talk about the times you were in the legislature. Isn't that where you started, the state legislature? Beat Russ Stillwell, as I recall. Went to the state legislature, and what happened after that?
I got a phone call 2 years later from somebody who was named Congressman Mike Pence, who said, would you like to be vetted as lieutenant governor? Now, I literally got home that day after talking on the phone to someone on his campaign and Googled their name to make sure that it was not a crank call. It was April. It could have been an April Fool's. But it was a great opportunity. And I say still to today, that was the greatest privilege of my life, to serve in that capacity and to prepare me for what I'm doing today.
That was 2012 election?
2012.
And was that Mike Pence's first term?
Yes.
And you were elected and together, and you ran against John Gregg from Vincennes and Vi Simpson out of the Bloomington area. you won by 100,000 votes, but closer in the modern era, I would say. But there was still a Democratic Party in those days, wasn't there, in the state of Indiana?
There was.
Pat,
and
they need you.
I might announce. I don't know what I'll announce for, but I might announce. And then, but you didn't fill out the full 4-year term. You made another decision.
Well, in the 4th year, as we were approaching re-election, I was approached by a number of people to say, hey, Ivy Tech's presidency is open. If you recall, I spent 6 years at the University of Southern Indiana, have an earned PhD, and had done significant work in the State House as lieutenant governor for the Indiana Career Council, vice chair of that, and a lot of work in economic development, workforce development. So after a lot of soul searching, including consulting my Sisters of St. Benedict in Ferdinand, really challenged the governor to say, where's the best seat on the bus for me to serve Indiana? And after a number of conversations, he and I came to agreement that this was a good opportunity, and in the spring of that year, I threw my name in the hat.
And a guy named Eric Holcomb replaced you.
He did. He did, and may I say, served our state very well for 8 years as governor. It was a pleasure to work alongside
Even
him.
though we have an Ivy Tech campus on First Avenue right here in downtown Evansville, a lot of people don't know what Ivy Tech's all about.
Yeah, and that's one of my great discoveries as lieutenant governor. Yes, I had done some work with Dan Schenck, then chancellor of Ivy Tech in Evansville, but as you travel 92 counties of Indiana, you realize there's an Ivy Tech everywhere.
Right.
So 19 campuses today, serving more than 200,000 students, 3% of Indiana's population right now going to Ivy Tech, 6% of our workforce. I understood just how important Ivy Tech was as Indiana's workforce engine, and where our educational attainment was at that time and where it still needs to go.
You say the workforce engine, but when I was on the state board, there was a movement to make Ivy Tech as well as an economic engine.
Absolutely.
A junior college program.
Yes.
To reduce the cost.
We do both.
So how are we doing with that?
Great. We do the transfer to a 4-year school, so 2+2 transfers to all of our institutions, including my alma mater, where we just rolled out last year, Green to Gold, with a guaranteed admissions into Purdue engineering, which
She's talking about Purdue.
Yeah, it's a pretty darn good school up there in West Lafayette, Indiana. So, but we have fully embraced all of those transfer programs. But the truth is, our lion's share of our students still are workforce driven. Our registered nurses, we will complete 1,500 nurses a year, plus another 500 practical nurses, all going to serve Hoosiers across the state. Largest associate in nursing program in the nation, and growing it. So those are the things. Yes, we provide half of all of the advanced manufacturing credentials in the state of Indiana, and you know we're the most manufacturing intensive state in the nation. So very important things that Ivy Tech is engaged in.
Before we leave, go ahead.
Given all those important things, how do you explain what the General Assembly did to your budget?
They skinnied it a little bit, didn't they?
Yeah.
Did you get the same 5% and hold
5
back?
and 5,
And
yes.
hold back,
5% cut, 5% held back. Look, I was in the General Assembly. I know they have to make tough decisions, and I don't think anyone was prepared for $2.4 billion shortfall announced a couple of weeks before the end of session. So I get that. The governor had to make decisions. The General Assembly had to make decisions. In this case, a lot of that fell on the shoulders of higher education.
Yet we were able to buy a $90,000 SUV for the
Lieutenant Governor and the Secretary of State.
I mean, I'm sorry. I think what they did to higher education, especially Ivy Tech, is unconscionable. I'll say it to anybody, Republican or Democrat. You don't balance the budget on the backs of young people trying to get ahead in life.
Well, and we'll get to that, because before I leave and lose this thought, though, are you still in touch with Mike Pence?
Well, Occasionally.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know, even though the Orange Monster joined him in saying hang him there in the demonstration on the Capitol steps, I believe Mike Pence has maybe rethought that relationship with the
I think he
idiot
also
in
showed
chief.
profiles and courage what he did on that fateful day as well.
He did indeed. But despite the efforts of Ivy Tech, and I go back, my trusteeship started in the early 2000s, and I remember that, first of all, Indiana ranks somewhat, between 40 and 50th in the country in terms of a college-educated population?
It depends how you measure it. Today, and because of Ivy Tech, we have moved up because we are actually the largest sub-associate degree or conferrer of any institution in the country, meaning a lot of what's needed today to have a good or even a very strong career in many areas is something less than a 4-year degree. So we've leaned in, and as we do that, Indiana's continued to move up in educational attainment. And folks like Lumina, who really study what the economy is going to require, would say, where Indiana's going, yes, we'll still need 4-year degrees, but even more emphasis on the upskilling of not just the 90,000 Hoosiers who graduate each year, but how about the 2 million Hoosiers who don't have anything, a credential of value that will help them have a greater career?
I'm with you, but you'll agree with me, we're playing catch up. Sort of, because we did not have a junior college system. We had Purdue and IU with regional campuses. We didn't have what other states, because we had an economy that was based upon low-level manufacturing and agriculture. There was no need for college.
And today, Ivy Tech is the envy of the country because we're this singly accredited system, meaning when you take a program in Gary, it's the same program as you're taking in Indianapolis or Evansville. And for employers like Eli Lilly, that is contracting with Ivy Tech for a 1,000-person talent pipeline. Now think about that. I've never met anybody who works at Eli Lilly that goes home poor. They all do well, and they would like everyone to have an associate degree. So it's a wonderful, so we have the model today. We may have come late to the game, but I believe Ivy Tech is the envy. We have states around us trying to make their current community college and technical college systems into this single accredited statewide system that Ivy Tech has. It has helped us land SK Hynix, Samsung, and a number of large companies to Indiana. And so while we're late to the game, not too late.
No, I couldn't agree with you more.
It is
you got
continue to
two
leverage.
big supporters of higher education, whether it's 2-year, 4-year, or 1 year.
Let me say this, being controversial like I am. It was when IU and Purdue stopped their regional campus manifest destiny that allowed Ivy Tech to flourish and become more accessible.
Well, there were articulation agreements. Now, when you teach freshman comp, it transfers. By law, it transfers.
That's right.
Mitch
and
Daniels
we did a lot of
to do
things.
That happening.
Mitch Daniels, it was Frank O'Bannon and Evan By started building Ivy Techs all over the state of Indiana.
You're so wrong.
I am not wrong.
They built what resulted in the connection between the institutions of higher learning and Ivy Tech was Mitch Daniels is one who was the architect for the degrees transferring.
You may be right on that. After the Democrats began to build the newest building in every town, here, Terre Haute, wherever, was a beautiful Ivy Tech structure. That was when we still had a Democratic Party here in the town, in the state.
Spend money on bricks and mortar, but to actually make it a viable institution, it took Mitch Daniels to make it happen.
Mitch fell in line, but in any event, we had all these beautiful Ivy Tech campuses. They were all getting funded, and there was going to be here at our medical center right here with Dan Shank, we had IU, UE, USI, and we were going to have a wing here on Ivy Tech, and that was about, it was right before your time. 2016, and all of a sudden the legislature said, you know what, Ivy Tech, you ain't getting it done. We're not giving you another nickel, no more bricks and mortar, and we're not going to fund that, and we're not going to fund anything else until you give us some results. Is that when you got involved?
It's not exactly the way it went, but in 2016, when I came in, I looked at the priorities, and the priorities there were more dire priorities in 2016 than that Evansville piece. So that's, as an engineer, I always look for where's the greatest need. And the General Assembly has funded 5 projects
But
in my
your
time.
retention statistics were not good then. Your people proceeding on to get that 2-year degree were not good right then. And the legislature was saying, Ivy Tech, you're not fulfilling your promise. That's what I remember.
I will say yes and yes. Yes, we've improved retention. And we have a much different student body.
Right.
We are 70% working adult who are coming to Ivy Tech. Our retention numbers will never look the same
Right.
as a 4-year institution. Our students will come in and out. We're going to do everything we can to help them get what they want, and stackable credentials help them earn. They don't have to wait till they get to an associate degree to get a better job.
Right.
That first credential will help them get a better job. They can keep going at their pace, at their life, and get to that same good outcome. But it is a yes and yes.
I think Ivy Tech is critical to
It
the
is.
future of this state, to raising us from, you won't say it, but we're somewhere like 43rd out of 50 and a degree after high school in the United States of America. We have an economy that was based upon people putting parts in cars and refrigerators or farming, and we're playing catch up. And we've done a good job.
And
Well,
we need
there's
to
a
do
lot
more.
to do.
Yeah, and we need to do more. And I think everyone recognizes that upskilling, and it won't just be 1 degree. When you're 35, you're going to need to upskill some more, whether it's AI or some other technology or other advanced credential. So it will be the future of post-secondary is going to look very different. It won't be 1 degree when you're 18 to 22 and you use that the rest of your life solely. And I think that is where Ivy Tech is designed to be, that agile, flexible, adding those kind of credentials of value as they are needed, and aligned to things like the new high school diploma that the Secretary of Education just came out with. So we have done well, and as I always say, I've left plenty of headroom for the successor to do even more with Ivy Tech.
What will these cuts do to your progress? Where do you find
Well-
5% plus another holdback?
Well, there are days, I'm glad I'm an industrial engineer by degree. We are, as coming into this 10% cut, which is what it is, we have the strongest financials we've ever had. When I came here in 2016, we had several campuses that, had they had to stand alone, would have been bankrupt. As a system, we were okay, but today, our S&P and Fitch ratings are higher than they've ever been in the past. Yes, we had to announce a reduction in force and impact 200 of our employees, which, when you are our size, that is our largest area
That's
of
200
expense.
system-wide, right?
System-wide and shared across the entire. So my own systems office team was over 40 of those people. Less than a third of those were faculty. They were all positions across. And we do learn how to work smarter, not harder. We use technology. We're enabled in that way, and we lean into the changes. So can we sustain this 1 cut? Yes, for 2 years without shuttering programs or things of that nature. We will be able to serve.
Eliminating adjunct
Well, maybe a
faculty.
few, maybe a few. But overall, we will be, I am confident that we will be fine. We will have to have really hard conversations if it goes on.
I hate to sound negative, but the General Assembly has to understand, especially with Ivy Tech, you can't just expect to raise fees for those students.
Well,
the students that go to Ivy Tech are the most vulnerable
We don't.
financially.
Yeah, and we don't. In fact, today, our tuition is 3% lower today than when I arrived in 2016. So while it's increased, it's less than the rate of inflation. Secondly, what I knew when I got there is a quarter of our students couldn't afford their books. So we have the best book deal in the nation. We purchase our course materials for all of our students, and we negotiate every breath out of our bookstore providers and our publishers. And today, a student pays $16.50 per credit hour. Now that's less than $50 a book, which I would challenge any one of the 3 of us to remember when we were in school, any book costing less than $50, best in the
And they
nation.
get these books online as well.
And the secret is we've given up all of our profits. Other institutions, make millions of dollars on the backs of their students on those books. We gave up all that profit for the right thing, which means our students come first. We're always student-centered in our decisions and ensuring they can succeed.
What's your basketball team look like next year? Oh, wait. You don't
We're
have to
undefeated. We are undefeated
Well,
still.
and by the way, you talk about her fees, tuition not going up. The same idiots that gave her the 10% cut make sure that we can't raise tuition, or you better not. The Commission on Higher, whatever they're calling themselves this year, they constantly say now, no tuition increases, and by the way, we're cutting your budget, right?
We are learning how to do with less. And again, in the very short run, we will, I can assure your 5 million on this audience that Ivy Tech will remain strong in Indiana.
Tell us about you. We've got less than a minute. You got a successor. Tell us about him.
Dr. Marty Polio from Louisville, Kentucky, ran the 20th largest school corporation in the country. So I think my trustees were wise in that they knew that the system, not many people understand how to run a large system. Dr. Polio does know that. He also is very schooled in what we call dual credit and dual enrollment, or early college.
That's been a very successful program.
Very successful.
Statewide.
We have, in fact, this year, 98,000 high school students participated in that program. So he comes in with that knowledge. And then you all might know he went to IU, and he might have been.
It's about time we got rid of the Purdue.
He might have worked with Bobby Knight during his time.
Boom.
So he's been in a lot of Indiana high school gyms. So I think he has a taste for Indiana. And
10 seconds. Grandmother is an important, highly important job. But what else are we going to hear from Sue Ellspermann?
I will be very involved. You'll hear about me in southern Indiana in probably not ways you would think, and not political ways. My husband has threatened to move to Canada if I try that stuff again.
There's a lot of reasons about thinking to move in Canada now. When we come back, Les will take another shot at Pat. Thank you so much, Sue. Great to have you.
Thank you
Thanks for being here.
This was a pleasure.
Speaking of money.
Let's speak of money.
It's a very serious point here. They cut the budget for public broadcasting. That's not bad. That's not bad enough. There's now this clawback law that is being considered by Congress, where they would take back from public television, public radio, money they've already distributed over prior years. That's a disaster. Folks, if you got an extra dollar or a nickel, support your local radio station, MTV station.
And it ain't my team that's doing that. The next election, you have the right to change the course of the state and of the country.
Absolutely.
But you are nonpartisan, Your Honor.
But I'm nonpartisan, but I'm also for strengthening the positive public institutions we have and not cutting it to the bare bone.
We were lucky today, very fortunate to have a great guest in Sue Ellspermann, whose career has been one of public service. I think Ivy Tech has certainly progressed under her leadership. We can only hope that this gentleman, Polio, I think was his name, from Louisville, can keep the momentum.
I'm sure he will.
Thank you so much, you 5 million loyal viewers, 1 or 2 Republicans in there somewhere. We need to talk. Make sure you stay tuned because we got some more guests coming.